standalone application. So we're not covering what SocialStream is or how to use SocialStream specifically. We are looking at the SocialStream standalone application, how to install it, how to configure it. There are two versions of SocialStream Ninja, the Chrome extension and a YouTube channel. Now, a popular one that I know of is Lo-Fi Girl. They're always online. It doesn't have to be our channel. It could be really any channel, Lo-Fi Girl. This is the channel name or the username. It's a single word. It's usually @ channel name. You can ignore whether this is a channel name, not a username. Sometimes there's a conflict between usernames and channel names. In all likelihood, you can just ignore that. You can add it with or without the @ it doesn't matter. And then you hit OK. Now we added it as a source, an entry into SocialStream Ninja. Now YouTube is specifically unique in the sense that it has these two buttons, while the other sources only have one. This allows us to find multiple streams for that specific channel. So let me show you. I'll click it. We pull a list of all the current live streams for that channel. Lo-Fi Girl in particular has always lots of live streams going. So we can see all the ones that are going. Now we get to choose which ones we want to activate, whether it's actually a short and a regular YouTube. We can close these pop-ups once we just confirm the chat is there. So we can see we're going to hit icon to differentiate which one is which. We're going to hit activate. When I hit activate, it actually opened up a YouTube chat pop-up. I hit we're going to hit activate. When I hit activate, it actually opened up a YouTube chat pop-up for each source. So we can see that there's a YouTube chat pop-up for each one of these sources here that are listed. Now, we can close these pop-ups once we just confirm the chat is there to hide and reveal. In fact, when you close a chat pop-up, it actually becomes hidden, as you can see, automatically. So they're all hidden, and if I want to reveal one, I can reveal it. It doesn't actually close the window when you hit the X. It just hides it. Okay. If you want to actually close the window, you can hit the stop button, and you can always reactivate it if you need it. Now, what Social Stream Ninja does is it aggregates all the chat messages, it pulls the messages out into Social Stream, and so you can then make it available to other applications, but also to other features of Social Stream. The common thing you would open up is the doc page. This is the streaming chat page. It can be used as a doc in OBS. It can be used as a doc, like a dashboard in Social Stream, or it can be used as an overlay in applications like OBS. I'll touch on that quickly here, but here's the doc page, and we can see that all the incoming chat messages from Social Stream are going in here.
there should be audio now, although it might be. Oh no, there we go. Let me have a listen on my screen.
Stream Ninja, the Chrome extension.
Yeah, right. There was audio playing when I was listening to the video. Was there meant to be a picture? Right, there should be audio now, although it might be. Oh no, there we go. Let me have a listen on my screen. There is a picture.
Stream Ninja, the Chrome.
My audio sounds a bit muffled, actually. I wonder if my Windows just turned my mic down. I think it keeps doing that every time I go into StreamYard. No, it hasn't. Was there meant to be a picture? I might crank it up a bit though. Hopefully, it's not going to be clipping. It doesn't seem to be. There is a picture. Receiving. My audio sounds a bit muffled, actually. I wonder. Oh, no, that's not bad, actually. All right, there we go. Yeah, no, I'm just pissing about. I'm trying to get this thing called Social Stream Ninja to work. Because if I'm going to continue streaming, it's going to have to be through OBS when Talk Studio runs out in a couple of weeks. So, but I installed this standalone app, and it doesn't appear to be working that well. It could be because I haven't set it up properly. Like, so I wonder if I go to YouTube chat. Audio is low. Yeah, okay. I can fix that. Come on now. Well, there we go. That seems to be okay. Hopefully that's better. If not, I can turn it up. Yeah. So I'm wondering if, rather than using this standalone app, which doesn't appear to be working that well, maybe I'll go for browser extension instead. Let's see. that's taking its time to install. Hello, Shelley. Okay, right, let me see. Let's pin you. Alright, let's go back into OBS, and that's going to be in overlays. We go chat and do that. Hopefully that will work. Well, it's done something. No, that one. Let's turn you on, and we'll move you down to here. Oh, it's in overlays, isn't it? Overlays. Right, chat. Can I interact with that? Interact? No. Okay, you know what? I think this is not working. Have I have I copied the link? I did, right. Okay, let's go to so let's switch you off. Close you. This video is unavailable. Why? Wait, what? Did my stream just go? That can't be right, surely. I think I'm still live. Right, okay. Let's pop this one out. Pop out the chat. Alright, okay, I'm not entirely sure what happened there. So let's copy you. We go back into OBS. That's chat. Paste. Okay. Right. Interact. Live. And then let's see. YouTube chat CSS. OBS. Right, there we go. Let's see. That seems pretty simple. I don't believe it's going to be that simple though, but let's find out. Paste view. No, it's not that simple. That's rubbish. Right. Okay, I suppose I go to Septopus. Right, and color gold, moderator color blue, sponsor color. Okay, that's fine. Messages. Let's make them. Okay, that's fine. And oh yeah, I remember. Was it this? Right. Chat. Paste. There we go. That's better. And then right. What's that in the top right? Icon group. I see. Yes. Icons. Oh right. Okay. Let's delete you. And then in here, you can just add an image. Okay. working fine. The only thing is, with the chat, go up slightly because there's a line there that I don't like. Okay, that can be locked. Go to overlays. Let's minimize you. And then will be so. Excellent. I could move that very slightly. Maybe like that. That could work. How's that looking on Snooze Tube? My channel. Videos unavailable. No, there it is. Okay. Can I duplicate this? Duplicate. Yes, I can. We're going to call this one output. Right, if we Oh, I see. I can't use. Okay, it's going to have to be that because I can't have my camera on OBS if I'm doing this. So that's no good. Black is no good. Um, Hang on, let's play around with it. Okay, black can work. Nice. That kind of works. I don't know what this thing is. Can I close it? More options. Non-video participants, listed previews. Okay, that's fine. Maybe that if I full screen myself, perhaps. There we go. Okay, so it does. I mean, it makes things look a bit weird because, of course, it's my mouse is in is black. So when my mouse hovers over things, like everything that's black is kind of looking a bit weird, but that'll do. So then if I do this, show members, okay. So Social Stream Ninja was complete rubbish. Let's remove the extension, and I'm also going to uninstall the app. Social Stream. Okay. I don't know that I want to do much else. I suppose it could piss about with theme transitions, but I'd need to download stuff for that. I can't be bothered. Oh, I do want to change that in YouTube though, because shareable link. Let's paste you in here. Yeah, because I want to change the icon at the bottom, but that's going to be in YouTube settings, isn't it? In the studio. Let's see, customization. There we go. Change you into that. So, has that now changed? Let's have a look on YouTube. There we go, it has changed. Very nice. Oh, hello, Crafty Cat. Now let's have a look in OBS. I don't quite like the placement of that, so it does need to be over slightly. Let's put that back into the center. Let's see how's that looking on YouTube, and then we go back to output basic. We'll see how that goes. Are you looking at the clocks? Well, I don't know. Are you? I used to have the clocks up when I used to do scam baiting, just because, it was nice. Mostly it was nice being able just to look at my screen and know what time it was in Delhi when I was talking to the scammers. And then, it was just kind of, I think it's quite classy having, clocks from around the world. Maybe I'll add more. I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of surprised that other streamers don't do that. Like, because because then like it would mean that because time zones do come up quite often. I find, um, especially when people are talking about setting something up. But yeah, like or just working out what time it is somewhere. Yeah. Hey, Creative Witch. I want to feel like I'm running a news organization. Yeah. And this high re-examination, and this I keep trying to switch people onto this. Like I put spoke to JS about this browser extension that I'm using that allows you to highlight comments the same way you can in StreamYard or Talk Studio. So that means you could have the only thing is, I mean, you can use software to integrate Discord and YouTube chat, which could be fun. Which I suppose I could do, and then it means that the people in Discord would be able to read the YouTube chat in Discord, and then they would be able to comment in Discord, and that would show up in the YouTube chat. So that way, the panelists would be able to read the YouTube chat whilst they're in a Discord voice channel. Who's in a comic book? Me? I don't think so. Crap, was that using, that might have been using Restream.io. I mean, I don't understand why you think I'm in a comic book. That doesn't seem, that seems a bit weird. Oh yeah, I saw that. I missed the stream entirely because it was on at stupid o'clock in the morning. And I managed to stay awake for a bit of the Rob Noor and King Blackout. Like I managed to stay awake for a bit of that, but yeah, then I had to go to bed. Now, what if? Oh, did you have an exchange with him? Yeah, if you DM me a if you DM me a link but include the timestamp, like there's a little button you can check if you go on like share video on YouTube. There's like a little button where you can say like start from this point in time, the point in time where you paused it, and it will, when you post a link in Discord, it will like just automatically start it from that point. Jim Browning, is he Irish? I think Jim Browning might be Irish. Has he got like at least 1 million subscribers? Yeah, I like Jim Browning. Cheers for examination. I'll check it out. Maybe I could check it out now. In fact, let's. How would I do this on NewsTube? I've forgotten how to do stuff. Well, I can actually just share it in Discord, right? Because I'm in a Discord voice call. I can share my screen in Discord, so I don't need to add it as a browser source. I can, in fact, share my screen. That's the one. Wait. Let's get rid of this a second. Oh, share stream audio. No, that should just work then. So if I now full screen that, and then full screen this, and then we can get rid of this, and unmute. Now I haven't got headphones on, so.
And then let's see, I've got re-examination, and then Clay
Can you hear
drops to
that?
the Big Ten and actually sacrifices himself for
Let
the
me
shaman.
unmute
We
on
love you, Clay.
YouTube.
Hang tight backstage. Get everybody up here, and then also backstage, I've got Tony Drake, Duck and Sarcastic Saint waiting very patiently. Y'all.
Oh, that's weird. I've forgotten about that. I need to keep this visible at all times. Is that right? Why has that? Oh, I see. No. Where output panel? It's because I moved panels for some reason. I don't quite understand why that happened, but I think we're good now.
Can figure it out from there. Okay.
Was that
Somebody
moral
has.
for him to sacrifice himself?
Yes. It was a voluntary assistance of will. He voluntarily sacrificed himself to help another, which is perfectly moral.
All right. Spin, what are you trying to do here? Are you who are you booting?
My fucking anchor baby nemesis, Clay stays. He goes bye-bye.
All right, that's a direct shot. All right, Shaman, sorry. Okay, Clay, you're back on.
I tried.
You tried.
Hey, T-Jump, I don't know if you remember me. We ran into each other in real life at some point. No, okay. We were at a sandwich establishment, and I noticed who you were.
Jimmy Johns, yes, we met here in Minnesota. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
We
Yeah,
talked
guy from
about it,
Chicago.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so good to see you again.
Fucking explains who the fuck this moron is.
All right, so question for you.
The
And
person in the
apology-
bottom right, Spin City News, he seems quite annoyed.
because I wasn't able to see the whole thing. What gives value? By value, I mean
How's the
any
audio
trait that
levels?
is prescriptive to
Like if I'm talking at the
contingent
same time
moral
as the
agents.
video.
Law of physics.
The law of physics. Okay.
Mhm.
So, is there anything prescriptive to what gives value? And by value, I mean any trait that is prescriptive to contingent moral agents.
Law of physics.
The law of physics. Okay.
Mhm.
So, is there anything that says somebody ought to forgive somebody?
Well, oughts are a separate part. Oughts aren't necessary, but I would say that the truth maker of a moral claim is the correspondence to the law of physics. So, like, if it's moral to forgive someone, that is a descriptive fact of something that corresponds to a law of physics.
So, how would forgiveness act in a law of physics where a wrong was done, but justice, it was not the preferable thing, but forgiveness is the preferable thing? How would
Well,
you
I don't
explain
think
that?
forgiveness is a moral thing. If forgiveness is optional, it can be moral, but it isn't necessarily moral. So I would.
Is forgiveness real?
Sure.
Okay, so you of yourself can absolve somebody of something they've done wrong, even though they've done wrong and it's too late, you can't take it back.
Yeah, but that wouldn't necessarily be moral. May or may not. Doesn't really make a difference.
Does it affect what actually happened? The person's
No.
forgiveness of the person? No. So does that mean that the guilt stays even after forgiveness is given?
Maybe yes, maybe no. It depends on the person.
Do you believe in a status of guilt?
You mean like do people experience it? Sure.
No, it's like someone is objectively guilty, and in the sense that you have committed an act that is wrong, and therefore you have a moral status of being guilty for something.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Is being guilty a moral status or just a status? Sorry, Jesus Christ, I'm not an American. Or is it just a factual one? Is it just a descriptive one? I'm not sure that you could say that it's a moral status necessarily, because you can be guilty of things that aren't immoral. Like it's just a descriptor, right?
For like blameworthiness.
Okay, so then blameworthiness is real. You have blameworthiness realism in your rubric.
Sure.
Okay, so does the person who forgives that person erase the person's blameworthiness for it?
No.
Does that mean that there is a call for
Right.
justice
Yeah. I mean,
on
that's
that
no, because forgiveness is just means that you're not going to seek retribution. Like it doesn't really do anything. Like it doesn't change anything about the individual that you're forgiving. It just changes your relationship to them. Yeah, that would be my take on it.
person, regardless of whether or not their forgiveness has happened?
I don't know what
Let's
that
take
means.
that back.
Do you believe? Okay, so does the person who forgives that person erase the person's blameworthiness for it?
No.
Does that mean that there is a call for justice on that person, regardless of whether or not their forgiveness has happened?
Well, there
know what that
might be,
means.
but it wouldn't be on the part of the person who has forgiven them, because society might have a call for justice separate from the kind of needs of the immediate victim.
Do you believe in justice?
Probably
Do you believe justice
not.
is a real thing? So,
I
for
don't know what you
example,
mean.
okay, so for example, let's say do you believe that, well, maybe I should ask this. Do you believe that government is preferable for society as opposed to like anarchy or something?
As a pragmatic evil, yes, it's the lesser evil.
A pragmatic evil.
Yeah, so it's bad. Like taxes are an immoral thing that we impose on people, but we do it to
Interesting.
prevent a greater immorality, which is anarchism. Yeah, I don't think anarchism or libertarianism work. They're bad, but I also think governments are bad. They're just less bad.
Okay. So the blameworthiness stays upon that person for the rest of their life, and it
Well, it's
can't be
eternity. It doesn't ever go away. If you committed a crime, you're eternally blameworthy for that crime.
right. So, but when I say you believe in justice, you mean that there is a calling upon other people to impose a punishment or penalty
No.
to somebody? No.
No, it's never moral to impose a punishment. The moral thing to do would be like what Jesus said, turn the other cheek, or what Gandhi said is to forgive all of your enemies. So it's never moral to impose a punishment as a form of justice. That's simply just a pragmatic thing we do to try to prevent greater harm. It's never good. It's never moral to impose punishments.
So so would you say that it's sometimes moral to do wrong then?
No.
Well, but you're saying there are, I admit that what you're presenting are different tiers of priorities, and some priorities are superseding while there are simultaneous evils and considerations and lesser evils, right?
Right. So yeah, it can sometimes be the rational decision to do a lesser evil to prevent a greater evil, but it's still
Mhm.
always an evil. It never becomes a good. It's still a lesser evil. So like the
Yeah.
trolley problem, if you have to option between killing one or killing five, you can rationally choose to kill the one, which is a less immoral action, but it's still an immoral action. It never becomes good.
Here's a problem I've got with that.
Sure.
Let's say you steal $5,000 from me. Isn't it just to force me to give the $5,000 back if I'm unwilling?
Sort of. It would be a lesser immoral action. So it would still be immoral, but it would be a lesser
How-
immoral action.
How is that immoral to give back what ontologically belongs to you?
Well,
I mean, you do
thing to
believe in
do would be to
stealing,
turn
right?
The other cheek. The moral thing to do would be like, I will let you have it. That's the moral thing to do. That's
That's
like
very
if you wanna be
Christian.
absolute- yeah, in a way, sort of, in parts of Christianity.
Super Christian. I'd say cut their
so-
fucking head off.
So like, what
Okay,
you're
so
asking for
but
is-
turn the other
Bad.
cheek presupposes that you have had something immoral done to you in the first place,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right. So why would you honor that thing by establishing that thing as if that were the thing to keep continuing, as
Well, if
opposed
you
to
want to
justice?
be moral, that would be the thing to do. Morality is self-sacrifice. So if you want to make a self-sacrifice of the 5,000, that's the most moral thing you can do. Taking it back isn't the moral thing to do. It's justified. It's a justified immoral action, but it's not
Oh,
the
hold
moral
on, though.
thing to do.
But do you believe in private property?
Sure.
Okay, so then why wouldn't giving it back be the moral thing to do that supersedes anything else?
Because that's not what
So,
morality is.
so there's a different. I think, like giving it. It seems to me that T Jump, and maybe this is going to be made explicit in a bit, but T Jump seems to be arguing that taking money from somebody to return to a victim would be an immoral act, a lesser immoral act, but still immoral. But it seems that presumably he wouldn't feel the same way if the perpetrator volunteered to give the money back, say the $5,000.
Logical. It's not moral. Moral is a voluntary assistance of will. Immorality is an involuntary imposition of will. So if you voluntarily give it back, that's moral.
Oh, here we go.
That's being moral. If you forcibly take it from him, that's another immoral action. The moral
gives
thing
will
to do-
value?
See, like so, he's kind of expressing the Buddhist attitude towards theft here, which is that theft is described as taking, like what you're enjoined to refrain against is taking the not given. And so like you could make an argument that from a Buddhist perspective, taking something from a criminal and then giving it to the victim forcibly. Like, you could maybe make an argument that it breaches that precept. I'd need to think about that.
Is will value? That's
Yeah.
what do you mean?
Like, what makes will prescriptive for other moral agents
What
in your worldview?
what makes will prescriptive? So it's kind of like why
Yeah. So
do,
why should your will be prescriptive over mine in
it's
my
like
actions?
it's like asking why do we have moral value?
All
in
right, the
Christianity?
easy
It's
answer to
fundamental-
that is it shouldn't. But if you're going to try and impose your will on a collective who have come to some sort of intersubjective agreement, then I think you're going to find yourself in a very difficult position because, you know, they have more power. Like the many have more power than the few. So, you know, yeah. I mean, assuming that the few aren't billionaires or generals or whatever. Right?
part of nature.
Well, we're talking about your framework tonight. We can
Right.
talk about my framework maybe at some
No,
point.
no,
But
I'm trying to
we're
answer
talking
your
about-
question by giving you an analogy to compare to your worldview. So when you ask what makes something good, you say it's because of God's nature, and you ask me what makes something good, it's because of the nature of physics. It's the same answer. I'm just trying.
Yeah,
to
but you would agree the nature of physics doesn't give us purpose, right? It just is a thing that is.
No, I'm saying it does. I'm saying morality, purpose, meaning they're a law of physics, just like gravity, just a different law.
So how does an unconscious?
What,
So
did he? Because this is like 2 hours and 45 minutes into a nearly 5-hour stream. Did he ever justify how morality is a law of the universe, just like the laws of physics are? Because it seems to me that that's a claim that requires justification because it's quite a bold claim. Like, because we can observe the laws of physics, we can conduct experiments to test various hypotheses. Like, but how would you test whether an action is wrong or not using physics? That, like, did he ever explain? I don't really want to have to watch nearly 3 hours of content. Did you get him to explain how that works?
For example, if I wrote a song and I said, this is what the song means, how would that be different than? Would that be any different than what physics does to us?
I don't understand your question, but I think
so let's say.
hold on. Sorry.
Sure.
How does a non-conscious entity give meaning? It's like the karmic field or the dharmic field. The essence of the thing is in the nature of the object. So if you ask how does God's nature define morality without a conscious decision? Well, it's just a part of his nature. The same thing applies to karmic fields or dharmic fields or laws of physics that ground morality. The essence of the meaning and purpose is the nature.
I hope he's not representing or trying to represent Buddhism here. Let's just take it back.
Give meaning. It's like the karmic field or the dharmic field. The essence of the thing
right.
is in the nature of the.
Now, maybe he may be referencing Hindu ideas of the Dharma, although the Dharmic field, I don't know what that means unless he's talking about the field of phenomena, because Dharma can just mean phenomena. And karmic field, well, karma is just action. So I suppose I'm not entirely sure what that means, but neither of those things would have an essence. Like, and later schools of Buddhism, like the Madhyamaka school, which was very influential, explicitly refuted this idea that anything has an essence, including expressions of the Dharma.
The object. So if you ask how does God's nature define morality without a conscious decision? Well, it's just a part of his nature. The same thing applies to karmic fields or dharmic fields or laws of physics that ground morality. The essence of the meaning and purpose is the nature of the thing.
Except the difference would be with God, there is a distinction between good and evil. Good is what ought be, and evil is what ought not be. So how
Like,
could what ought not be?
Because the thing about karma in Buddhism and ethics in Buddhism, and I can't speak for Hinduism, I can only speak for Buddhism, is that it's not metaphysically objective. It's instrumentally objective. Like, they're not, like, the precepts aren't an end in themselves. They're not rules. They're a means to an end. Like, they're kind of principles for training the mind.
Be just as native to reality as what ought be.
So in the
Can you
Christian
say that, but
worldview-
in English? Like, just
Yeah. So do we agree? Do we agree
Apologize.
that good? Do we agree that can we have a universe of 100% truth? Like like everything is
What
real.
does that mean?
100%.
Okay, re-examination. What does that mean? A universe of 100% truth? Because I would argue that the universe is neither true nor false, it just is. Statements about the universe can be true or false, or propositions or ideas about the universe can be true or false. But the universe itself isn't true or false. The universe just is.
Everything is always true. You can't have
Right.
false
Okay.
ones in
I'm
reality.
making a point. I have a
You came
follow
off
up.
your script.
okay.
You came off your script. Now you're lost.
No, I'm making a point. Is
You were
it
reading a
possible
script.
to? Is it? I'm not reading a
handle the
script,
tough
dude.
questions.
Not now. That's why you're confused. You were reading your script the first 30
You're
minutes.
confused. I know what I'm doing. Anyway, the point
Okay,
is,
we'll find out.
can you have a universe with 100% lies?
Yes.
Again, what does that mean?
Yeah.
A universe of 100% lies, because it's as meaningless as asking if you can have a universe that's 100% truth. Like, it seems to me to be a category mistake in that the properties of truth and falsehood don't seem to apply.
I don't,
A universe that's
lies-
inherently not real.
lies aren't an ontology. You can't have a universe of
Uh,
lies.
so are we?
Okay.
Right, there's a pair of scissors on my table here. Like, the scissors being on the table, like, that's not true or false. That just is. But the statement, the scissors are on the table, that can be true or false. But the scissors actually being on the table, that can't be true or false, because that's not a proposition.
Thank you. Great. So would you say that lies are typically
No script.
immoral?
No.
No.
No,
Oh,
lie,
they're
there's
not
nothing
typically
wrong
immoral.
about lying. Lying isn't an imposition on anyone's will. Lies can be immoral if you cause someone to accept something without consent. That can be immoral. But lies, like if I say, you have the prettiest eyes I've ever seen, is that immoral? Like, no, there's nothing wrong with that. Most lies have no moral value at all.
Does gaslighting have moral value?
Yes, it can. If you are deliberately trying to interfere with someone's consent by giving them an incorrect comprehension of reality, that can be immoral. Yes.
But if their view of themselves and their will is untouched, how is it immoral if their will has not changed?
If you give someone a incorrect comprehension of reality that causes them to give false consent, that would be immoral. Doesn't matter if their will changes.
How do you define false consent?
Like if I
Who
say,
judges what false consent
sign
is?
this contract and I'll give you $1 million, but actually I just get to take all of your money, that would be a false consent. I've lied to you, which has then caused you to lose money.
Yes, that's lying. That's not gaslighting.
Gaslighting would be giving you like a false perception of reality, like
Right,
telling
no,
someone it's
gaslighting
lie
is
that
a
gives
form
them
of lying,
complete-
isn't it? You're misrepresenting what's true, or at least you're attempting to, in order to achieve a desired psychological response.
It's their fault or something.
Telling
Well,
Spin that he's
gaslighting would be
actually-
telling people that their
Gaslighting
brain is not
being
working
for
properly,
reality
that,
completely.
that they don't have a grasp on reality.
Well, it's not always
it-
that their brain isn't working correctly. It's just giving them a false perception of reality, usually causing them to believe it's
Yeah, like
their
religion.
fault. like religion.
But they're trying. But in the case of gaslighting, they're trying to convince the person that they don't have a grasp on reality, and therefore they're dependent on some other interpreter to do that for them, right?
No, they're
Yes,
just trying to convince you something that's false. It's like you have a belief. This belief is false, which gives you a false perception of reality. So it's when they say that gaslighting is trying to give you a different perception on reality, it's trying to make you to believe something that's false. That's all it means.
Examination.
But then how
do
does
you have a
gaslighting
claim-
differentiate
do you have a
itself
claim, or are
from-
you making an internal critique? I'm just curious. Is this an internal critique or is there a
I don't
claim?
think so.
Because I'd love to hear if there's a claim.
Yeah, I'm trying to explore, because when me and
Okay.
T-Jump talked last time, we got into more of my worldview, and I wanted to get more into
Alright.
his, because
Sure.
I'm
Internal
trying to figure out.
critique.
I'm trying to figure out
Okay.
how there can be prescriptions within a world where evil or immoral things are just as negative to the world as moral things, because in my mind they're not in the
Say that
same thing.
again?
Because
Yes.
where I'm trying to figure out where
my answer
where-
would be free will, but he doesn't believe in free will.
Yeah, I believe in compatibilism, but go ahead. What was your question? Something about how can?
Yeah. So, do you think good and evil have the same prescriptive power? Like for example, if you're saying that evil is just as natural as good, it comes just as naturally because of physics. Evil is real because of physics. Good is real because of physics. Does that mean that good and evil are just as naive to each other? Is this dualistic? Is there? How does
No, I
this
don't
work?
understand your question. Like there can be multiple things that reality creates. There's like the positive and negative, up and down. Like what is? I don't understand your
I
question.
mean, the answer would be
Like,
yes,
everything
right?
is-
Because, like, I mean, I suppose in order for evil to be prescriptive, you would need to have a system codified and formalized, and whoever came up with the system would need to acknowledge, I suppose, that they were trying to prescribe what it means to be evil. Evil.
Everything is reality. Everything is physical. Just like
Yeah.
God created everything. God created evil. Out.
So in my mind, good is prescriptive, and you said it's not
Prescriptive is irrelevant. So prescriptive is a debate in morality. It's irrelevant to the topic. You can have prescriptive moralities. You can have non-prescriptive moralities. That's just not relevant to the topic.
So if I said that you should teach your children to do good things, I've said essentially
So-
nothing, according to you.
I think the problem from my view is that you're coming from, or you seem to be coming from a view where what is good and what is evil have something essential to them. But on my view, what is good and what is evil depends upon whether you're in a system that has explicit definitions for what is good and what is evil, such as Christianity or Buddhism, or whether you're in part of a society, which we all are, whether we like it or not, in which there is an intersubjective definition of what is good and what is evil, and that often but not always defines the laws that are made. And it doesn't seem to me that any of those situations gives rise to a situation, like a context in which good or evil have some kind of essential properties. I mean, I get that from your view, good and evil do have essential properties. But that's based upon a claim that, on my view, is non-falsifiable, the existence of God, of a God who has defined what those properties are.
Or have I said something?
Prescriptions exist as a construct of language. Yes.
So if I say to my children that you should stay away from strangers, or that you should not hit other children, is that just an exercise of language, or is that because there is an ought associated with what it's good?
Oughts are not required for morality. That's just not a part of requirement for morality. Oughts.
Yeah, the oughts are linguistic here, right? You're saying you should not do this. Presumably, you're attaching some sort of consequences as well, right? So it's actually like instrumental. So, because generally, you say to a child, "You should not do this," and then maybe let's say you say to a child, "Don't hit your sibling," right? And let's say the child hits a sibling, and being a reasonable parent, you might give them a pass the first time, or maybe even the first couple of times. But then you say, "Okay, if you hit your sibling, these are going to be the consequences. So you ought not to hit your sibling," right? And like oughts can be derived just from conditioning. This doesn't seem to me to be a difficult question to address, particularly.
Descriptions exist as a construct of language, yes.
And that's, I think, also fair. Like, because if you're going to say that prescriptions exist independently of language, then you need to demonstrate their presence in the universe.
So if I say to my children that you should stay away from strangers or that you should not hit other children, is that just an exercise of language, or is that because there is an ought associated with what is
Again,
good?
oughts are not required for morality. That's just not a part of requirement for morality. Oughts
Yeah, that's the part.
not.
Can you?
Although to say like prescriptions are a function of language kind of seems trivially true, like because any statement is a function of language, really. Yeah.
Flesh it out for me, because that's the part that's hardest for me to get.
Sure. So it's a common misconception that people think that oughts are synonymous with morality. It's there are many different models of morality that have moral facts without oughts and prescriptions. I have a list of them on my website. It's part of the fact.
His audio's a bit ropey here.
I don't have them memorized. There's a bunch of them.
While we find that list, can I ask Spin? Hey, Spin, what kind of popcorn are you eating?
Actually, before anybody does this, I wanted to wait. I wanted to wait for a good point to chime in here. Okay, so first off, Roscon sent in $20 and said, "Bring Clay back." All right, so that would be booting the shaman back out. But then, and then Spin came in with the 20 on here that says Clay with the protection. So that's
well. It depends on what you mean. When you say meaningless, the meanings of words are derived through usage. Like words don't have intrinsic meaning, so because we decide what words mean, and that's why dictionaries are descriptive, not prescriptive. They don't tell you what words are supposed to mean. They tell you what words mean according to how they're being used at the time, which is why they get updated every year. Like this idea that words have some kind of intrinsic meaning that is unchanging is ludicrous. But that's not the same as saying that because words don't have an intrinsic meaning, that words have no meaning whatsoever. It just means that they have a meaning that is derived from context. If good or bad is meant to distinguish real things, what are we talking about in his objective framework? Yeah, which was I might need to go back and watch. How long is the interview? Is it like an hour or something? Yeah, it seems to be about an hour. When does it start? Right, there's a bit of... Okay. And that's on his channel rather than Sarah's, I think. On his channel rather than Sarah's? Yeah, okay. All right, so yeah, maybe the interview is like 40 odd minutes or something. So like I'd have been interested in hearing about how he arrived at the conclusion that physics somehow determines what's moral or immoral. because it seems to me that's the real question, and everything else, like until you ascertain how he's like arriving at that mechanism or how that mechanism works, you know, because like, I don't know, to compare it to the laws of physics seems weird because we can measure the laws of physics, like we can, like, let's just kind of talk about light, for example. Like, we can measure light and its speed and its properties and how it behaves under different conditions. I mean, I did see in and there was like a little intro video on the stream where he was kind of talking about what he means, and he did make the distinction between metaphysical objectivity, which is what Christians typically refer to, and he mentioned a couple of others, like he mentioned scientific, and there was another one. He didn't mention instrumental. And it seems to me that if your moral system, assuming it's arrived at outside of your own thinking, but if your moral system is aiming at some sort of goal, even if that goal is just like an orderly and peaceful society, then it's instrumentally objective.
That's 40.
How much more of this interaction is between you and he, or is that it?
For Clay City, who go then next up
and then morality that have moral facts that I can answer,
and then next up in line was
that I can answer the question. So here's a list of models of morality that have moral facts but no normativity: descriptive moral realism, anti-reasons moral realism, pure moral geometry, structural moral realism, value realism without practical authority, non-normative fitting attitude theory, non-natural moral realism minus oughts, metaethical moral classification models, pre-normative moral realism, moral topology, moral space models, imposition ethics mine. So there's lots of academic models. This is not a novel thing that I've introduced. Having moral facts without oughts is very, very simple. Oughts are just an added thing that we add. After you know what's moral, you can say you ought to do this, but the ought isn't required for it to be moral. That's just it's not relevant.
Well, in my mind, when you're talking about respecting somebody's will, that comes with an ought. That comes with, like, do you believe in the conscience?
Yes, consciousness.
No, conscience, as in like a part of you that it can be injured. So, for example, like if I do something that, we'll just say for the sake of argument, that I believe is wrong, and I just keep willing myself to do it, and then that bleeds into me doing many other things that I believe is wrong. Do you believe that there's a part of you that can get damaged that imposes a moral structure that if you go against it enough, that you will damage your psyche?
No, that's not a thing.
You don't believe that? Okay.
Well, so that's like an empirical question.
Husky, are you still with us? Do we have a boot ready?
He's grabbing. He went to go grab the thing for the stunt.
All right, we'll give you a second to get the boot, and then you got an actual boot coming after that. All right, back to you, Tom.
Yeah, so there's no part of your brain that's damaged by doing immoral things. Like that's been studied pretty extensively. You can have certain parts of your brains that change through neuroplasticity, but no parts like damaged by doing it, unless you're like doing something that literally has a physical impact on your brain, like drinking or drugs heavily or something.
Yeah, you would say that trauma can have an effect on the brain that's measurable, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm still, so you've listed a bunch of models, which would of course require me to do a lot of reading on those and how those work.
Sure.
But because you've told me the titles for those models, I'm still having, based on my understanding of morality, I'm still having a lack of understanding as to what it means to even be moral or immoral if it's not prescriptive, if it's not purpose, if there's not an ought to it, or if purpose means something that is unconscious, that, because, okay, for example, go back to the song argument.
So like, in Christianity, what makes something wrong is that it doesn't coincide with God's nature. It is a fact. It is a fact that this action does not coincide with God's nature. There is no prescriptivity there. You don't need it. There's nothing in that sentence that's anything about prescriptions or oughts. It's irrelevant. You can then say this action does not coincide with God's nature, therefore we ought to do it. But that's just irrelevant. You don't need any of that language at all. And you can do the same thing in naturalistic pantheism. You say this action does not correspond with the nature of the moral law, therefore it is immoral. You don't need to add any.
So it seems like what he's pointing towards here, which isn't something that I know an awful lot about, is an idea that, as far as I'm aware, originated with David Hume, who is a Scottish philosopher, called the is-ought problem. Like, how do you derive an ought from an is? And what he seems to be saying here is, like, you have this situation where there's this objective morality, and that's the is, but that doesn't necessarily give rise to oughts.
No prescriptions, none of that language is required at all. You can then add that and say, once we know that this is not in correspondence with the moral law, we know it's immoral, and therefore you ought not do it. So you can add prescriptions to any moral model ever. All of these you can just add them to, but they're just not relevant. So what makes something wrong is that it does not correspond to.
Well, it sort of depends on the system. If the system is instrumentally objective, then the oughts are relevant. Because then the question is, well, does this action lead to move you closer or further away from the goal that the system of morality that you're following leads to? And if it leads to the goal, then you ought to do it. And if it leads away from the goal, then you ought not to do it. So like it seems to me there are situations in which you can derive an ought from an is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like, I'm not keen on this idea of trying to blend science with morality, or trying to derive morality from science, or vice versa, deriving science from morality. Well, I suppose you could do a study, but anyway, yeah.
The moral entity, whatever grounds morality, that's what makes it wrong. That's what a moral object is. Then after that, you can add prescriptivity. You can add, you ought not do it, you should not do it, but whether or not you do, the prescriptivity is just irrelevant.
Well, wouldn't you agree that if God does exist, he has property rights over us and can tell us what to do?
No.
Why not?
Even if he existed, each individual agent has rights over themselves. No one owns you. It's immoral for someone to own you. And so he absolutely does not have rights over you. And it would be immoral for him to do things without your consent.
Yeah, I mean, I would also say no, because like I'm not even sure if in the Bible God does assert property rights over other sentient beings. But even if he does, merely making the assertion doesn't mean that it's correct. Not necessarily. Maybe God's lying.
Yeah, that doesn't make it. I don't think that makes any sense. If he created your will, he is purposed for what it is. So if he has, so again,
That's slavery.
back to the
That's
song,
moral.
back to the song. If I write a song, and I say this is what the song means, this is the correct interpretation of the song, and then somebody else comes and says, no, I think this is the correct interpretation of the song, and I say X, he says Y. Are we both equally correct?
For a song, no, a song isn't a conscious agent.
So when I make something, then it is for my purposes. I can give the meaning to it that I intended, right?
Only if it's not a
No, you can't. Again, because I hope he's going to reinforce this point. A song is not a conscious agent, right? Like you can't do that with your child. Let me just take it back and see exactly what you say.
Of the song, and then somebody else comes and says, no, I think this is the correct interpretation of the song, and I say X, he says Y. Are we both equally correct?
For a song, no, a song isn't a conscious agent.
You say God is truth, and I suppose that's quite a bold claim, and I would have to ask you how you know that's the case. And if your response is because God says so, I would argue that a being's assertions about themselves, if all you have to go on are just the assertions, then I don't think you can necessarily assume that those assertions are true. Like, because if God were deceptive, then it might be in his interest to convince people that he is truth.
So when I make something, then it is for my purposes. I can give the meaning to it that I intended, right?
Only if it's not a conscious agent. If it's a conscious agent, you don't get any rights over it at all. It has its own rights. It intrinsically has rights of its own.
And also, you're wrong about just like acts of creation, like artistic creation. Once you release something into the wilds of public consumption, an author's original intent becomes irrelevant because the audience will map their own interpretations onto the work of art, whether you like it or not, and then for them, that's what that work of art becomes about. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. And you know, that can be annoying perhaps, but you know, that's just what happens.
Has value because it's a conscious agent. You have no rights over it. You get to say nothing about it.
Oh dear, no, that's the impossibility of the contrary is not an argument. First of all, in order to make that claim, you would need to be aware of every single contrary position, and you can't be aware of them because there are going to be contrary positions that haven't arisen yet. And then secondly, even if all other positions are impossible, that doesn't mean that yours is true, because yours could be impossible too. Could be that any expression of metaphysical reality is wrong due to the limitations of our minds and language.
It gets to decide for itself.
But if you create the conscious agent, you have property rights over it to tell exactly what to do. Absolutely.
Creating another agent, the agent itself has rights over itself always, in every libertarian value, in every conscious value, in any moral system. A conscious agent never becomes your property because you create it, ever.
Yeah, like I don't think you can make the claim that a conscious agent that you create, because that you have property rights over, because that means then that you could sell your children legally, and rights like property rights especially, I mean, that they're a legalistic claim, right? They're not a moral claim.
That's just an immoral system. Just obviously, it's just slavery.
Immoral based on what standard?
Based on every independent measure of morality we possibly could ever have.
So even if you made physics and the people that live in physical world, that would still be why?
100%.
It doesn't.
because every conscious agent intrinsically has value, and for you to own them would be slavery, and slavery is
So
immoral.
that's prescriptive. So that's prescriptive right
No,
there.
no,
Usually
remember-
telling you what not to do.
No, remember,
Let
so
me
you can
just
take a
interject
moral
here real
So
fact.
does that mean owning
then
traffic
add
cones
on
is
to
immoral?
it.
Yeah, no, to be fair, he didn't say that God should not have property rights or should not assert property rights. He's just saying if God is asserting property rights, that's immoral for this reason.
Thoughts on irrelevant.
Well,
These are
Well,
odd
no,
knots,
he
my
didn't say
friend.
that once.
while we're in
Oh,
odd
re-examination. You're straw manning in. That's not good.
Husky ought to do, dear God, on a traffic cone. All right,
Yeah,
let's
why
do
not?
it.
So,
Here we go.
Gibbs, you might remember this traffic cone. I cut a hole in it so that I could use glass bottles.
Nice.
Do you
Oh,
remember?
I thought
this
it was for the Hoochie Mamas, but never mind.
one? Oh no, that's just
All
for
right,
you
hit it.
actually.
Hit it.
Yeah, I'll be honest.
I don't know what y'all are talking about though.
Before you do, hold on. Before you do, let me get through the rest of the super chats, please. I appreciate it. I actually agree. Tire exchange. Anyone wants to come up? Husky U5 says it wasn't me. It was a fake Roscon. The Wiseman gifting out to all.
It's now.
Aw, how's she doing?
It's still swollen up, and she honestly
rolling in the dough. Now, let me ask you one point because it does apply. All right, so like an argument many people make is that we're in a simulation. All right, let's just take it down to let's just say something we can see. Let's just say somehow my Sims character became sentient. Now, am I enslaving the Sims character by owning that game and running? Yes, I am. Okay, the Sims character doesn't exist if I don't continue to play that build. Would it be moral or immoral to continue to play that build, even though I'm forcing them to be slaves because I'm playing the game? Which one is
Lesser
it?
immoral action. So it would be like a justified immoral action to continue playing, like the trolley problem, killing the 1 instead of the 5. You'd be doing a bad thing because you are trapping them against their will, but it's the less bad option because if you stop trapping them, you kill them. So the best thing to do is to continue playing until you have a way to free them and give them free rights and individuality.
Okay, so then you would just say let them go on and auto or let them do the sentient choices and then not take part in it. So would it be immoral or moral in that sense? If say I let them do whatever they want, would it be immoral or moral in that sense to I don't know, run the world in any form or way? Because
Hang on a minute. Let me check the Discords. 14936. 14936. Yes.
Leans on this really just is whatever we decide. If he decides that he's going to fight me for it, or if I decide.
Right. Okay. Keep playing. All right. make your fucking mind up.
And then I'm going to fight him for it. This might be a death scenario where
that would be immoral.
But Clay, is the fight taking
the desert?
Let's say you, real quick, back to pregnancy. Let's say you didn't abort the child. If you can say that on YouTube. Let's say you just before they were born, you removed both their arms, so that when they were born, they had no arms. Is that morally acceptable or no?
That would be immoral. So imposing constraints on a child, a conscious entity, would be immoral.
So you can end their life, but you can't take away their arms.
If they consent to it, you can take away their arms.
Also, wait,
what?
Is it just right before they're born?
So specifically about abortion, I would say that aborting a child when it's conscious is immoral. It's a conscious agent, so killing it would be immoral. But it's a justified immoral action to protect the sanctity of the mother. So I would agree it's immoral to abort a living conscious entity, and it would also be immoral to take its arms off. Sure, yes.
But in the case of when he was on when the woman was on a starvation strike,
I never said
strike.
that wasn't immoral. I don't know why you keep going back to that. So that would also be immoral.
Okay, I thought you said that. I thought you said that the nature of putting the baby inside the woman was immoral. I thought that's what you said.
Well, that's a different thing. So that causing pregnancy without consent is immoral. So if someone
but that was not the scenario.
Right. That's why I didn't talk about it just then. But you brought that up.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. So removing arms is bad. Killing them might not be bad. Okay, real quick though.
No, so if they're conscious, killing them is always bad. If they're unconscious, it's always bad to kill them.
But if they're not conscious and you remove the arms before the consciousness, then it's fine to give the birth later without arms because at the time you took the arms off, they had no consciousness?
No, because you've imposed a constraint on them before they were conscious. You're still imposing a constraint on their body, so that would still be bad.
Okay. So even though the will is not there, that the will is irrelevant because the constraint came before will.
Well, no, so the creating a will isn't bad because you haven't imposed anything. But if you're complying constraints on that will, like damaging the body to once the will is then created to limit its abilities, that would definitely be immoral. So are
you saying there's a way a body ought be? Like there's an actual solid ontology to humanity that's immutable?
Well, yeah, it ought to be free for the conscious being to choose itself. That's what it.
So that's prescriptive. There's an ought there.
No, I remember we already covered that you can have moral facts without oughts, but you can add oughts to any moral fact.
Okay, so I agree that they're I'm trying.
I mean that seems to be quite a good point that he's making there. Like the moral facts themselves don't require oughts in order to be moral facts, assuming you believe in moral facts. But you can add prescriptions to moral facts. I mean, and that the prescriptions are separate from the moral facts.
To get my arms, no pun intended, around what's going on here, because if we're talking about will here, then I want to know at what stage will has play on this. For example, let's say let's say there's a guy who's a PDF file and he's just alone in his room and he's thinking PDF thoughts all the time, just drooling, slobbering in his room, being that kind of guy, right? And there's no actual victim. Did he do something immoral?
No, there is no thought crime. Thought crime is not a thing.
There's no victim.
Okay.
What if he? Okay.
I mean, from a Buddhist perspective, he would be, although not for the emotive reasons that you're bringing the example up, but because engaging in that kind of thought process is more likely to lead you to actually commit the act, and then that's harmful. And then, but even so, even leaving that aside, from the Buddhist view, being overly invested in sexual activity is detrimental to your well-being. You reject the emotive charge. Yeah, no, of course it was. That's why you brought up paedophilia. It's a very specific rhetorical tactic. Come on, re-examination. Just own it. It's fine. I do it all the time. God condemns for thought. Right, okay. But I mean, that may be true within the Christian paradigm, but if you're going to convince me that the idea that God condemns for what you're thinking is something that I should consider, then you need to demonstrate that God is actually real. And I haven't had a personal experience of God, and none of the arguments seem particularly convincing to me. I mean, some are stronger than others. Some are complete dog shit, like Tag. I think maybe there's a version of the cosmological argument that I think is quite strong. Yeah.
But also, from earlier, then it just sounds like that your morality in this.
Well, yeah, but okay, but you could have used any act, and I find it interesting that people don't people tend to, when they want to make an example, a kind of moral example, they'll use the most extreme acts they can think of. And which would be fine, except then they won't actually talk about what they're talking about. So they're kind of being cowards. Like they'll say grape rather than rape. And I just sort of think if you're going to discuss controversial topics, you should at least just openly fucking discuss them. But like the same question could be just as equally addressed by something that's much less emotive and that's much less likely to trigger some sort of emotional response in people, such as, shoplifting, right? And it's like the exact same point can be made. Right, precisely. It was a rhetorical tactic. Yeah, because it was emotive. Yeah, I know. Just own it. It's fine. like I do that sometimes. Although I have started calling out this particular tactic, especially when it's combined with trying to adhere to TikTok rules, because it's like, well, like if you're not actually going to be in a position to discuss this topic like an adult without substituting fruit euphemisms,
instance does not stem from imposing on something's will, because you said that when you're removing the baby or the arms from the baby before they had before they were a conscious being, then it wouldn't have a will to impose upon them. So it can't be the case that it's immoral under your
the
view.
Immorality is implying restrictions to a consciousness, not the creation of the conscious. It doesn't matter if you imply those restrictions.
You've already demonstrated. You've already said that it wasn't.
I mean, under his paradigm, T-jumps, abortion must be immoral, because if you terminate the life, then you're restricting the consciousness from doing anything. Because if his argument is that if you remove the arms from a fetus before consciousness has developed, right, that's immoral, because then when the baby is born, the lack of arms is going to be a constraint. Then surely, if you terminate the fetus before consciousnness has developed, that's equally as immoral, because there's even less potential for that consciousness to express itself in any way, like it can't express itself in any way whatsoever because it doesn't exist. See,
unconscious.
It doesn't matter when you apply the restrictions. If you're applying restrictions to a consciousness after it's created, that's immoral. Just the act of creation isn't immoral, but applying restrictions is. So like if you're going to, I don't know, glue sticks to the baby's back or whatever, that would also be immoral. It doesn't matter if it's before or after it's born.
So let's work off of that. Let's say that the mother knows, in this case, that the baby's going to miscarry before they're ever a conscious being. Does that make it immoral then to remove their arms and mess with their limbs?
Right. What's the new timestamp? 11037. Oh, do you know, it's quite nice. I've got I got my Cintiq out of the box and hooked that up. So now I've got 3 screens, because I also have David's monitor from his computer, which was my old computer. All right, let me see. It's 11037.
Is a valid choice.
That's an option, so you can choose not to do it. That's fine. Go for it.
So you can go on a hunger strike as a pregnant woman?
You can. That's an option.
Oh.
You can?
Yes.
And that would not be immoral. So you put the baby in a vulnerable situation. You go on.
Is a valid choice.
That's an option, so you can choose not to do it. That's fine. Go for it.
So you can go on a hunger strike as a pregnant woman?
You can. That's an option.
Oh.
You can?
Yes. So
And that would not be immoral. So you put the baby in a vulnerable situation. You go on a hunger strike, baby dies, and you've done nothing wrong.
All of the options there were immoral. Pulling the switch one way or the other are both immoral. So like, I don't know why your example is bad. You
Wait.
choose immoral things.
Hold on. Why are we supposing that not going on a hunger strike was also immoral?
No one said that.
Okay, but you said all the options were immoral. So one option
Yes.
is not to go on a hunger strike.
That would okay, that could be it. Like if she doesn't want that, that would be immoral too. It would be an immoral imposition on her.
So all options.
What? Wait.
are-
So is pregnancy a moral imposition?
It can be, yeah, absolutely. That's what rape is.
Well, no, rape is different than pregnancy. I think
Well,
you'd agree to that.
Rape
But-
causing
but-
pregnancy
but-
would be immoral. Yes.
Okay, but so it wouldn't be immoral to you to do a hunger strike while you have a baby.
It probably would because you'd be imposing on the child. Yes.
Why
I never said
wouldn't
it wasn't.
Okay, so why wouldn't what would you differentiate it from a pregnancy that is an imposition of will versus it's not? Are you a pro-choice?
Yes. So a
Interesting.
pregnancy that would not be consensual is like if you didn't consent to get pregnant and you got pregnant against your will, that would be a non-consensual pregnancy.
So the baby would be immoral while it's in the womb.
No, nature would be immoral for putting the baby in you. The baby didn't do anything.
Would the man be immoral for putting the baby in the womb?
Sorry, did he say nature? Did he say nature would be immoral?
A non-consensual pregnancy.
So the baby would be immoral while it's in the womb.
No, nature would be immoral for putting the baby in you. The baby didn't do anything.
I hope you didn't let that one slide. Re-examination.
Would the man be immoral for putting the baby in the womb?
No, nature would be immoral for putting the baby in. The man didn't, unless the man deliberately impregnated her, like with the.
Well,
face
the man participated in the nature's ability to put the sperm in.
Nature doesn't have abilities. I don't quite understand what's being said here. Like what's being argued here. Nature doesn't do stuff. It's a way we have of describing like biological life and I suppose the environment. Well, I mean, yes, you could argue the environment does stuff, but it's not like nature is this entity hovering over people who are procreating and deciding who gets pregnant and who doesn't.
Yeah, but
if I throw a rock at somebody's head, I don't blame nature for the rock I threw at somebody's head.
Right. I know what will happen if I.
Do you know it's funny re-examination. There's a passage in the Bodhicharyavatara who by Shantideva. I think it's probably in the chapter on forbearance. Where he asks, you get annoyed with the person like striking you with a stick, but you don't get annoyed with a stick, which is a bit mental. I'm paraphrasing massively. Let me see. I might. Doopy doopy boo. Well, maybe. I mean, I can't just sit here reading the entire chapter, looking for one verse. Although I did find a verse that's slightly opposite. His the knife and mine the body, the twofold cause of suffering. He has grasped the knife, I my body, at which is their anger. Anyway.
I participate, I know what the potential is, right?
But that doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. So knowing the potential doesn't mean you're to blame.
It's easy
for
to
the
say it's
potential.
irrelevant, but it is relevant.
So if I play Russian roulette, knowing the potential isn't irrelevant?
I mean, yes, like there's nothing immoral with playing Russian roulette. But
Well,
so to answer
but
the
we're
question,
talking about potential now.
So to answer the question,
right.
In the case of pregnancy, if the man and the woman both do not
bullshit.
Stop talking, Glenn.
Yeah, he said nature. Yeah, which is hang on a minute. How's that? Let's bring you back up. Yeah, nature, which is a bit weird because that appears to be an act of reification on his part that I would have thought he would have resisted, because it's like, well, what does he mean when he says that nature makes people pregnant? Like, yeah. I'm surprised no one picked him up on that, really.
Stop talking, Clay.
Yeah, that is painful to use.
Stop talking, Clay. Stop talking, Clay. If Clay doesn't stop talking, I'm just gonna leave. I don't have time for this. So, Sarah, if you don't like, calm me down.
You're on open panel,
let me
dude.
read
We're
some
on the
super
gauntlet
chats,
now.
and maybe I can let you guys reset. Maybe that'll help you out a little better. Fourth Wiseman says, "Goal done." P.S. Husky loves water. Husky, do you love water, sir?
Absolutely.
And of is a conscious agent. Will that mean a 5-year will impose their will upon you, and you will
acquiesce?
Thank you. That hurt my brain for a second. Go ahead.
So again, kids can't consent, but yes, the moral thing to do would be to acquiesce to children. So if children want to play and bang pots, it's moral to let them do so rather than stopping them. So yes, if you can acquiesce their will and there's no greater consequence that you have to prevent, it is moral to let them play with pots.
Well, I'd say that's less. Well, yeah, I mean, because he would need to be imparting an agential self to the rock, such that the rock was capable of making decisions, and was capable of acting upon those decisions.
Break stuff.
I do not consent, sir.
Well, I would like to jump in on what examination is saying with T Jump here. Or, I think this is important. This is why I brought up the Sims thing. I asked about like, oh, if I like some people consented and they knew, and oh, everybody did this one thing, and some people would still suffer. If there's no choice that is moral, and it's only more immoral and less moral, that means the morality doesn't exist at all, because everything is shades of immorality, because that way the word means nothing. And if we can all choose our word mean nothing, then it's subjective. Like, and that's really like kind of where you're going with this. And like examination is exactly right to keep hounding this point to you, because you keep saying, oh, well, it'd be more moral this way, but it's still moral that way. Well, if there's all immoral, then there is no morality.
No, that's literally stupid. Like if you have two immoral options, simply defining one as moral is called moral laundering. This is the thing in this philosophy for idiots who try to do this. If you're saying that if one of these two options must necessarily be the good option, and the two options are kill one person and kill 5 people, then your morality is called utilitarianism. And utilitarianism has this major problem where it says the bad option, the least bad, is necessarily good, which is why we don't accept utilitarianism, because it has moral laundering. This is a very stupid position, very stupid argument.
It is a stupid position. I agree. It's kind of why your
That's
position
literally
is
just
stupid
what
as
you
well.
just argued.
I know it's not what I argued. I was pointing out how stupid it was. But once again,
No,
thank you for
your
picking up
position
what I'm
was the
putting down.
stupid one.
Again, you're just explaining my positions again. I love it. But you're really failing. I love it. It's amazing when these people come on here and they try to explain words and like
And
we
you don't
all have
understand them
Google. We
because
haven't
you're
been on
stupid.
debate panels for
It
years.
is amazing.
But yeah,
It
you're
is-
right.
It's very amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. We had a little switcheroo. Re-exam.
Well, I think we watched the second part, didn't we? I'm fairly certain we did. Let me check. Let me check the Discord. 14936. I'm fairly certain we've actually watched this. 14936.
Leans on the this really just is whatever we decide. If he decides that he's going to fight me for it, or if I decide that I'm going to fight him for it, this might be a death scenario where
yes, that would be immoral.
But Clay, is the fight taking place? Is the fight taking place on when you're walking on grass?
No, there's no grass. It's a desert.
No. Okay.
It's a desert.
Okay. Then you're not killing grass, so you haven't committed a immoral act. Continue.
real quick, back to pregnancy. Let's say you didn't abort the child. If you can say that on YouTube. Let's say you just before they were born, you removed both their arms, so that when they were born, they had no arms. Is that morally acceptable or no?
That would be immoral. So, like imposing constraints on.
So, was this the second part? Oh, I keep expecting to see the comment pop up on YouTube, but there's a delay because it's OBS. Is this the second part? Let me bring this over here and bring that over here. Yeah.
On a child, a conscious entity would be immoral.
So you can end their life, but you can't take away their arms.
If they consent to it, you can take away their arms.
Also, wait,
what?
sorry, is it just right before they're born?
So specifically about abortion, I would say that aborting a child when it's conscious is immoral. It's a conscious agent, so killing it would be immoral. But it's a justified immoral action to protect the sanctity of the mother. So I would agree it's immoral to abort a living conscious entity, and it would also be immoral to take its arms off. Sure, yes.
But in the case of when he was on when the woman was on a starvation strike,
I never said
strike.
that wasn't immoral. I don't know why you keep going back to that. So that would also be immoral.
Okay, I thought you said that. I thought you said that the nature of putting the baby inside the woman was immoral. I thought that's what you said.
Well, that's a different thing. So that causing pregnancy without consent is immoral. So like if someone
but that was not the scenario.
Right. That's why I didn't talk about it just then. But you brought that up.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. So removing arms is bad. Killing them might not be bad. Okay, real quick though.
No, so if they're conscious, killing them is always bad. If they're conscious, it's always bad to kill them.
But if they're not conscious and you remove the arms before the consciousness, then it's fine to give the birth later without arms because at the time you took the arms off, they had no consciousness.
No, because you've imposed a constraint on them before they were conscious. You're still imposing a constraint on their body, so that would still be bad.
Okay. So even though the will is not there, that the will is irrelevant.
See, that there's the inconsistency, and I suppose if it were me, I would have kind of drilled down on that, because if removing the arms from a fetus before the fetus is a conscious human being is immoral because you are constraining the physical abilities of the child in the future.
Not be bad. Okay, real quick though.
No, so if they're conscious, killing them is always bad. If they're conscious, it's always bad to kill them.
But if they're not conscious and you remove the arms before the consciousness, then it's fine to give the birth later without arms because at the time you took the arms off, they had no consciousness.
No, because you've imposed a constraint on them before they were conscious. You're still imposing a constraint on their body, so that would still be bad.
Right. Well, terminating the pregnancy is also imposing a constraint on their body. It's like the ultimate constraint. So, I don't know. I'd probably have drilled down more into that, because that seems to me to be an inconsistency in his view. Again, I keep looking at YouTube rather than OBS. Let me make the OBS window bigger.
Okay. So even though the will is not there, that the will is irrelevant because the constraint came before will.
Well, no. So the creating a will isn't bad because you haven't imposed on anything. But if you're applying constraints on that will, like damaging the body to once the will is then created to limit its abilities, that would definitely be immoral. So like,
So are you saying there's a way a body ought be? Like there's an actual solid ontology to humanity that's immutable?
Well, yeah, it ought to be free for the conscious being to choose itself. That's what it.
So that's prescriptive. There's an ought there.
No, I remember we already covered that you can have moral facts without oughts, but you can add oughts to any moral fact.
Okay, so I agree that I'm trying to get my arms, no pun intended, around what's going on here, because if we're talking about will here, then I want to know at what stage will has play on this. For example, let's say let's say there's a guy who's a PDF file and he's just alone in his room and he's thinking PDF thoughts all the time, just drooling, slobbering in his room, being that kind of guy, right? And there's no actual victim. Did he do something immoral?
No, there is no thought crime. Thought crime is not a thing.
There's no victim.
Okay.
What if he? Okay, let's move
but
on.
But also, from earlier, then it just sounds like that your morality in this instance does not stem from imposing on something's will, because you said that when you're removing the baby or the arms from the baby before they were a conscious being, then it wouldn't have a will to impose upon them. So it can't be the case that it's immoral under your
the
view.
Immorality is implying restrictions to a consciousness, not the creation of the conscious. It doesn't matter if you imply those restrictions.
You've already you've already said that it wasn't conscious.
No, it doesn't matter when you apply the restrictions. If you're applying restrictions to a consciousness after it's created, that's immoral. Just the act of creation isn't immoral.
Well, I don't know why he keeps bringing up the act of creation, but so on his view, then I suppose I would have asked him, would it be immoral to kill a baby that's already been born? And he would presumably answer yes, because you're impacting that child's ability to exercise its will. And so if the argument is that taking the arms from a fetus that doesn't yet have a consciousness is immoral because you're impacting its ability in the future, then similarly taking its life must also be equally immoral. So this does appear to be an inconsistency in T-Jump's position here. No doubt, driven by ideological concerns, but yeah.
But applying restrictions is so
Well, I say that would be my challenge to him. That this inconsistency is being driven by ideological concerns rather than logical ones.
If you're going to, I don't know, glue sticks to the baby's back or whatever, that would also be immoral. It doesn't matter if it's before or after it's born.
So let's work off of that. Let's say that the mother knows, in this case, that the baby's going to miscarry before they're ever a conscious being. Does that make it immoral then to remove their arms and mess with their limbs, so long as that the baby's still alive before they're miscarried?
So yeah, if you know for a fact it'll never be conscious, then it wouldn't be moral or immoral.
But how do you know?
I don't know. That was he asked.
The hypothetical said he would know.
That's what I'm asking. But how do you know?
I've got a question.
That you would know that they aren't going to be conscious.
Is attaching the knowledge of good and evil into a single fruit immoral? Or should they have been two different fruits?
Well, the fruits aren't conscious agents. You can do whatever you want to the fruit.
No, but we had to find out about both to eat one.
I mean,
Is that moral or immoral?
It was immoral to force them to be alive without that knowledge in the first place.
Well, I would argue it was immoral to maybe force them to be alive without that knowledge and then put them in a garden with the tree and give the serpent access to the tree and make the serpent deceptive and make it so that Eve was susceptible to being deceived by the serpent. He didn't need to do any of that. He could have put the tree on Mars.
About kids.
Wait,
it's immoral to create human beings or conscious entities without full knowledge. That shouldn't be a thing.
What was the question, Omar? I'm sorry.
But then how?
So if they didn't have the knowledge of good and evil, then you can put the knowledge of good and evil.
Okay. God is all powerful. He can snap you into existence with full knowledge. You don't need to eat apples. You don't need to start as kids.
Yeah, but we're not talking about necessity, because earlier, didn't you say something about not consenting to knowledge that you don't want, even if you're not aware that you don't want it?
Sure.
We're talking Genesis, 6 billion people on Earth.
So if they're not even aware that they want it or don't want it, if they're not even aware that they want it or don't want it, how is that immoral? I thought you said...
Because a conscious being must start with a certain minimum level of ability to consent. That's like a requirement.
Well, no, is this an example of you attaching an ought to something or not? Because when you say you can attach...
Well, if a conscious being must be able to consent, then a rock impeding your way can't be immoral, because you can't give your consent to a rock because a rock isn't making a request.
Something does that
all
mean
moral facts can exist without oughts, but you can add oughts to any moral facts. Oughts
when you say you can ought, does that mean you can add oughts? Does that mean that the oughts exist when you add them, or they're all fictional?
They're all fictional.
So if we want, so there's no reason we ought to work towards the best possible world. It's just there is a best possible world, and we can work to it if we want to, but we don't have to. We can go for the worst possible world, and it's not actually violating anything to work towards the worst possible world.
Well, it'd be violating truth. That's what it'd be violating.
What would that matter? What gives value to truth then?
Well, whether you care, I don't care if you care or not.
No, I'm talking about objectively. If we're talking about if something's good or bad, we're making a value claim.
So like, you are being immoral.
See, this is partly, I think, if you're... One of the reasons why I like moral emotivism is that it's a very easy position to defend. Because you just argue, look, when I'm saying murder is bad, I'm not actually making a statement about the ontological nature of the act of murder. I'm telling you how I feel about it. I'm essentially saying, I don't like murder, don't do that. and then you could say, well, why should the person respond? And it's like, well, there's no shoulds in a way. Like, it depends on what you're wanting. If the person isn't interested in a harmonious society in which people can prosper and flourish, then there's no argument to say that he should do that, except that the people who are interested in a society in which individuals can prosper and flourish seem to be the vast majority. And if you disrupt the ability of those individuals to peacefully go about their lives, there are likely to be legal consequences. So, you know.
If you do immoral things, whether you care, whether you think it matters, I mean, it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. What matters is the objective fact. You are doing immoral things. Now, if you want to say you ought not do immoral things, you can add that if you want. It's just irrelevant. It's just irrelevant to any moral system. You can just get rid of all of the oughts from every moral system, and it makes zero difference.
No, that's not true. If the system is instrumentally objective, then the oughts are like instrumental. Like, so saying when the Buddha says, you know, like, murder is wrong, he's not saying murder is wrong because there's something intrinsic about the act of murder. He's saying, look, murder is wrong, like, one, because it's, you know, you are depriving something of the, like, that's of supreme importance to them, and two, it has a deleterious effect on your own state of being as a murderer. And so if you want to avoid the deleterious effect, and in fact, if you just want to be experiencing beneficial effects, then you ought to behave according to these rules, like precepts. Nearly used the word rules there.
So, but when you say moral, you're making a claim about physical phenomena, because you say the mind and the will would be physical phenomena.
Are we testing how long? No, I was testing. I was trying to test out something called Social Stream Ninja, but I couldn't get it to work properly, and so because like Talk Studio is going to be running out in April, and at the moment I can't justify paying for it. So if I'm going to stream in the future, it's going to have to be on Discord and OBS, which means that fewer people will be coming on the panel because some people don't like using Discord, especially if you're on a phone. It can be difficult, I suppose. Yeah, we'll see.
I'm not right.
Well, not in my case, no. Mine would be true even if they weren't physical. Just any mind, even if it's a non-physical mind, would still be under the same moral constraints.
But in your worldview, it is physical. Your thoughts are physical. The will is physical, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, but does it follow? So it would follow the laws of physics, right?
Sure.
Right. But do the laws of physics preempt your thoughts?
Yes.
Do they guide your thoughts and tell your thoughts what to be before you think them?
Sure.
Okay. So then within physics itself is morality and immorality, and therefore it's not prescriptive. And then if it's not prescriptive, what makes anything best? What makes anything
best? None of
best?
that has to do with being prescriptive. Again, you don't need prescriptions. Prescriptions are out. You don't need them.
That's fine. But what does it mean to have the best physics?
The best physics. The best in this context is corresponding to the moral law. The most corresponding possible to the moral law is the best.
How does, if it comes from nature, how is nature not corresponding with itself?
Because there are multiple laws.
So the multiple laws are not harmonious within the same reality?
Right.
But
the
who
laws
imposed these
conflict,
laws?
like gravity and electromagnetism. They don't work together.
I agree that they're not the same and they're not on the same plane, but they exist in the same universe without violating the law of non-contradiction?
Everything exists in the same reality. It doesn't mean they all work together.
Right, but you would say that bad contradicts good, right?
Sort of.
Not without
What do you
consent.
mean, sort of?
Bad and good, saying contradicts doesn't make any sense. They are like antithesis of one another. They don't contradict anything. There's not a logical contradiction between them.
So, but would you agree that something can't be unmitigated bad and unmitigated good in the same way at the same time, right?
Sure.
Right. Okay. So I don't know. I don't understand how you can say it's not prescriptive and yet we should.
You never need the word prescriptive in morality. It's just throw that in the trash can. It's just garbage. You don't need it ever for any reason. You don't need it for nothing.
So if I say we should stop teaching, let's say that every school.
Anytime you ever say should or prescribe, you can just say it is moral that X. And you can just get rid of you should do. Actually say it is moral at X. Anytime for any sentence ever used in any moral system where it ever says you should do or you ought do or we should think, just replace it with it is moral that X. Problem solved. You never need ought. You never need prescription. Those words are just not relevant to any morality ever.
Then if things just are what they are, how can you determine what a best universe is if you're talking about moral law? Because law sounds prescriptive.
And some things don't correspond to the moral law. Some things correspond to it, which are moral. Some things don't correspond to it, which are not moral. It's very simple. This is extremely simple.
Who should survive? Is it the guy with the crabs or the guy without the crabs?
I don't even know what that means.
Both of them should die.
I mean, because in all seriousness, bro, if you got crabs and you ain't washing because you think all of a sudden they get some type of special treatment because it's about consent.
But the crabs did not consent to being washed. The crabs did not consent to being washed. You cannot morally wash them.
Well,
saying
they wouldn't have a will though. They don't have like sufficient consciousness.
Cutting your hair, they'll be washing your hair.
Right, crabs.
Were you immoral to yourself? From
wait, are you talking about crabs the disease or crabs the the crustacean?
Not well, they're both crustaceans.
Well, the question is
crab.
You know,
there's crabs. Yes,
the question is, were you immoral for yourself?
Yes. So all conscious agents should be given their own world. None of them should be killed. No conscious agent should ever be killed. Ever.
So if you get bleach on you because you were swimming in the wrong water,
is it immoral to kill a conscious agent? Yes.
So you're gonna leave bleach on you?
No, I'm gonna kill it.
So
it's just going to be a
because they'd argue that the leech is an immoral conscious agent.
But it's not morally right to kill it.
I don't know. Maybe if it's not, then it's not immoral.
So what he's saying that like consciousness is what's necessary for will in this case, and since the parasite doesn't have a consciousness, then it's not going to be immoral to kill it.
No,
right.
he's
So
saying
I'm
it is
assuming
immoral.
his argument assumes that the crabs are conscious, and so I'm just granting that for the sake of the
I
argument.
did pass it to animals. I said it to you. I said, does this also pass to animals? A leech is an animal.
Bones is making a more complicated argument that they don't have the capacity for
It's a
consciousness.
parasite, but it's an animal. Let's be
And
clear.
you said, and I quote, "It is not morally right to kill animals."
I'm not disagreeing with that. Like,
This is
what
the
are
fight
you
of
talking about?
survival argument, okay? So who should survive? Should it be the agent that is
Everyone
teaching?
should survive. Every
In
conscious
Admiral,
agent
in
should
Admiral
survive.
Gibbs's reality, if they don't have an American Social Security number, they're already a lesser agent.
Well, hold on. Illegal.
I find that actually correct.
Well, does he address why everyone should survive? And what does he mean by that? Presumably he means everyone should, not that everyone should survive, but that everyone should die of natural causes. Rather than, say, being moided.
And this goes to like dogs, pets, right? So dogs are like slaves to us, essentially. They have no idea that they are slaves,
Which
but
is immoral.
they
Yes.
are, right? When you say that they have to consent to that, dogs don't consent to living
Right, which is
outside. But guess
immoral.
what? There's some outside dogs.
Right.
They
which
just
is
want to
immoral.
What prevents this from being trivially true, like water is water? What prevents this from just being saying that things that are happening in the universe are happening in the universe?
Correspondence to a law of physics isn't trivially true. It requires some kind of empirical verification. It's not.
There is empirical. There is
So
empirical
is it like
verification.
two-step verification? Like they send you a
Animals
number to your
will
phone to be alive?
Will leech us. They will leech us. They will. There's.
Okay, can we
there's
move
this
on to a serious point that I've already addressed that?
recognizing is just
If you
kind of.
haven't drank beer out of a boot, are you really alive?
Correct.
Fourth wise man with the Big Ten says an unborn in the womb is conscious beyond what the worldly paradigm can comprehend.
All right, yeah, I'm sure. All right, well, let's here we go. Well, that was interesting. I mean, I'm not convinced. I'd maybe need to go back and watch the interview between T. Jump and Sarah to see if he gets into how the laws of physics give rise to objective morality. Fuck it, let's do it.
Is Tom Jump. You can go check him out. He is live streaming as well. If you'd like to go over, send your love, subscribe, shout out, like, send super chats, whatever you need to do, you are more than welcome to. We fully support it. But Tom Jump has an interesting perspective this evening that we are going to deep dive into. I have not yet heard this claim. This is the first in as many morality arguments and debates we've had. I've not yet had an atheist come on and claim that morality is objective, and specifically being able to be objective without God. So, Tom, I'm going to hand it over to you if you want to kind of spill out your initial claims here, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I'm a moral realist, like most academic philosophers. Moral realism is just the position that morality has true statements that are stance independent, true independent of what anybody thinks about them. And it can be grounded in anything, essentially. Like, for morality to be objective, it just needs to be true independent of any mind or opinion. So like a Platonic object, or a rational a priori truth, or a law of physics, or a grounded in naturalistic pantheism, just the way nature is. There's lots of ways it can be objective. I lean towards naturalistic pantheism.
Right.
I think a more interesting approach is the fact that
Okay, so naturalistic pantheism. That's an interesting combination of words because pantheism is the view that, like, the universe is God, isn't it? Is the belief that the universe and nature are divine, rejecting all supernatural entities or afterlives. It equates God with the cosmos, physical laws, and natural processes. It focuses on reverence for nature, ecological consciousness, and scientific understanding of reality. So, key aspects of naturalistic pantheism include nature is supreme, divinity is embedded within nature rather than being a separate personal creator. There is a strict rejection of supernaturalism, including spirits, miracles, or a personal god. Nature is seen as an unconscious, interrelated, and impersonal totality. Okay. So it's like an impersonal pantheism. Maybe he'll go into that a bit more.
Since we are about to invent artificial general intelligence, we need to give it some kind of morality to make sure it doesn't turn us all into paper clips. And so we need to figure out what the best model of morality to give it would be. And if the moral subjectivists are true, then there's no correct answer to that question. If there is a correct answer to that question, there is an objectively best system of morality we can give an AI, then there is an objective morality. So it's very simple to understand there's going to be an objective morality because there's got to be a best system to give artificial intelligence. And the best way to describe that would be to start from the perspective of what would a morally perfect world be like. How do we describe that? And how do we describe that with the least principles possible? And from that, we can derive pragmatic applications of how we can do things in our world to make it closer to the best of all possible worlds. And so my position starts with the idea that a perfectly moral world would be a world that it is impossible to force anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing. The technical jargon would be like any involuntary imposition of will is immoral, and any voluntary assistance of will is moral. From this, we can say that it would not only be impossible to restrict people by other people, but also by nature. So aging would be immoral. That would be impossible. Death, rocks falling on you would be immoral. That would be impossible. And the only way to accomplish such a world would essentially be everybody has a starting point of their own world, their own universe, which they have full control over. It's their universe. They can design however they want. All conscious agents get their own universe. And there can be like a hub, like a gathering hub, like Twitter, where everyone can interact, but there's nothing anyone can do to anyone who doesn't consent to it in this hub. And you can change or refine rules in your world however you see fit, but no one is forced to enter without their consent, which would include full knowledge of whatever rules you have in your world. And this gives us a description of essentially just what a perfectly moral world would look like. And once we have that, we can give it to an AI to essentially make the best decisions possible given our current situation where we are in any spectrum from the worst world to the best world. And it can be the correct moral decision, the best that we can do in any given situation. That's generally the idea.
Okay. Can you, because you mentioned moral realist, but then you dive down the path of a naturalist pantheism?
Naturalistic pantheism is pantheism is just an idea that nature is fundamental. There's some fundamental thing that is nature, and that is the God, no conscious being needed. So naturalistic pantheism is essentially scientific version of theism, where it just says science, matter, and energy are the fundamental things. There's no God being, and that's it.
So that's assuming nobody just came and made it. It's just there.
Yeah,
right?
nature would be the necessary thing, just like how Christians think God is the necessary thing.
Okay, because I mean that kind of that makes me think of maybe evolution versus creationism in that aspect. Like, in terms of science, they have like the Big Bang Theory and then all of these other little mini theories out of that. Whereas Christianity believes that creationism was that God made. So without God, then things weren't made. But in the scientific realm of it, things collided and mutated and moved in this and that or another, so on and so forth. But you're saying that fundamental piece would be the necessary, right? Versus, am I understanding that correctly?
I think so. So yeah, like most worldviews hold that there is something that is foundational and uncreated. Theism holds that is a god of some kind. Pantheism holds that is nature. Nature is the necessary uncreated thing, or more like specific would be like a quantum particle or a quantum field or something along those lines.
Okay. Well, how does that how would that tie in with, like, how do you make that as the necessary? Like, how would you define that in terms of what is a necessary? I don't know if I'm asking that correctly.
So yeah, necessary being is defined as a being that exists in all possible worlds. So any world that exists, if something exists in it, it would be a necessary being. That's all it means.
Okay, so if aliens came and created the Earth, then they would be the necessary being in that aspect. It wouldn't matter. It wouldn't matter what the thing is. It's just that thing is required in order to cause and effect move its way down, right?
Sort of. So it's something that must exist in all logically possible worlds. So it's not specifically like whatever created the universe might not be logically necessary because it could have been created by something else. And those would just be possible worlds. A necessary being is one that exists in all logically possible worlds.
Okay. Now, wouldn't that kick out the concept of God then?
God would be the necessary being that they're arguing for, and we're replacing that with a non-God.
Right. But would that say that because you're saying from all logical, so wouldn't that kind of negate God as, because I think it's kind of debated whether it's logical that God is, right?
Right. So if I'm correct and naturalistic pantheism is true, that means God is incorrect and doesn't exist.
Right. Okay, I see what you're saying there. Okay, that makes sense. Now, you were talking about AI morality, and I didn't even pick up on this one before, that this would be a problem in terms of what we feed the AI. And I think that this, especially in today's world and what we see happening with AI being like in everybody's household and on everybody's phones, and everything that we're doing is AI generated in some weird way. But give me kind of a rundown with what we would feed AI in terms of telling it what the morality shouldn't be, and why. Why would we pick certain things over others?
Okay, so the biggest problem with AI morality is that AI is faster and smarter. Well, when it gets created, it's faster and smarter than any human ever will be. So if there's a way to game the system, it will find a way to game the system, and it can do it in any way it can conceive of. So if we say that the goal is to end world conflict, well, it could just kill all humans and end world conflict. You know, problem solved. So we need to make sure that there are guardrails that make
all right. See you later,
the
Denizen.
goal without killing everyone or destroying our lives or making us all slaves or putting us all in the matrix without our consent. So, and because AI is so smart and can find any possible loophole in any system we create, creating such a system is extremely difficult.
Well, because like at what point do you miss a loophole, right? And that's the danger of it. If I feed it one thing and if I tell it, like, for instance, I know that movie I, Robot, I mean, as much as it could be utilized in this instance, like it had, I think, like 3 rules or something like that. And then the AI or computer actually figured out a way to loophole it, even though all he was to own good. What kind of rules or laws it needs to follow in order to feed into the correct guardrails, I guess you could say.
Well, yeah, that's the hypothesis that I'm presenting. My morality says any involuntary imposition of will is immoral. So forcing anyone to do anything they don't consent to doing, that's the rule that needs to follow. That's bad. Don't do that.
I mean, I think you did mention about children, obviously telling a child like not to do something that will, is harmful, right? Or something that is not their best interest would be good. But in terms of adults, like I don't necessarily consent to wanting to work every day, right? I wouldn't necessarily consent to having to pay taxes or other, I don't know. I wouldn't consent to I don't know, somebody talking shit about me or something like that. But that doesn't mean that that's going to stop anybody from doing those things, right?
Yeah, so there's a couple points there. One is that kids can't consent, and so they wouldn't have the option to be able to do whatever they wanted in this context.
Right.
We would make an active effort to give every human or every conscious agent the intellectual and emotional development of an adult human, because it's technically not moral that conscious agents start without that. It's pretty immoral to actually start them without that. So we would try to make sure that anyone who is conscious should be given, through whatever means, like downloading intelligence into their brain or whatever, full human levels of intelligence. Secondly, there's lots of examples like, is it moral that we pay taxes? No, it's not moral at all. It's something we force on people in order to prevent a greater bad thing, which is like having no roads and starving to death and no healthcare in some countries, not the United States. So we force people to pay taxes to prevent worse things from happening. That doesn't mean paying taxes is good. It's just a lesser evil to prevent the greater evil. So I would agree that taxes are immoral, and that if we shouldn't have to pay them, and if in an AI controlled world we could essentially solve those problems without taxes, then getting rid of taxes would be morally good. But in the case of like having someone talk shit about you, that would not be immoral, because your will only applies to yourself and your property. So trying to restrict someone else's freedoms because you don't like it wouldn't be a restriction on you to say no. They can still talk shit about you if they want. Freedom of speech is still a thing.
Right. Okay. So let's go into the idea of I don't know, getting into a fight with somebody. I mean, what if I consent to getting into a fight with them, maybe, but I also didn't consent to them like beating the shit out of me either. At what point can you pull consent? I guess maybe would be my question. Or can you pull consent? Like, when does it start? When does it end? At what point?
Yeah, you can definitely say that I consent to a fight, like a boxing match, and then as soon as I surrender, well, the consent is over. If you don't consent, in the best possible world, it would just be physically impossible, so you wouldn't be able to do it. Obviously, we're not in the best of all possible worlds, and so there are rules that we have to impose in order to try and prevent when things do happen that go against our consent.
Okay. I mean, so 18 would be your number for when you can give consent, I'm assuming.
Say that again?
18 would be, I'm guessing, your number where you can give consent, legal consent.
Yeah, legal consent. There's probably some like objective truth value of what kind of brain function requires that. Like, obviously, if you're mentally handicapped, you can't even get consent after 18. So the mental requirement isn't based on age. It's based off something more fundamental. I have no idea what that is, though.
What about, I mean, if somebody, I mean, we see a lot of scams and stuff, and you could technically say somebody gave consent to doing a thing based off of whatever this scam was, or manipulation, so on and so forth. But they were still old enough to give consent and they still okayed it. Would you still say that that would be immoral because they were scammed, even though maybe bad thing didn't necessarily happen, but it's, they were gullible to do something or give somebody money or whatever the case? Kind of, where does that float in there?
Yeah, consent requires full knowledge of what's happening. So if someone tells you they're going to do something and you consent to it and they do more than that, then you haven't given consent to that whatever more they do. So that wouldn't be moral. So consent only applies with full knowledge of the implications of what you're consenting to, not with any like hidden meaning things. Those you haven't consented to, so it would be immoral.
Right. Okay. Just kind of.
I mean, it hasn't said what it is about restricting another agent's will. Like, what about that makes it immoral?
Poking at that. So with AI, though, what would be worst case scenario if we don't get their morality correct, if we don't feed it the right information? At what point like what would be the worst case scenario? Like we all die or Terminator
well, no,
3?
that wouldn't be the worst case scenario. I mean, that wouldn't even be in the top 10 of the worst case scenarios. The worst case scenario would be like worst possible suffering for everyone, where it turns us all into prisoners to torture for all eternity and keep us alive. That would probably be the worst possible. Or it just turns the world into the Christian worldview. Then that would be pretty bad too.
Oh my God, that's solid. That's solid. That's fair. So I guess Christianity is not your friend here in that aspect.
Yes, I'm not a fan of the drowning babies god.
Fair enough. Fair enough. With AI, what would be in term? Let's assume all of the loopholes are covered. Everything is perfect. What would the best case scenario be with AI and how it works with us?
It would essentially be an extension, a tool of your desires. So you say, I want to.
I've actually had enough of that. I've kind of had enough of streaming. The test appears to be working. So, yeah. Yeah, the test appears to work. Audio appears to work. I'm not using Voicemeeter anymore, which does limit routing options, but it'll be fine. It'll be fine anyway. Yeah, I mean, thanks for hanging out for me testing shit on OBS. I'll see you later. Bye.